Oh, that's sweet. That's really cool. Hi, I'm Ryan from Make Battle, and in this video we're going to be going over a really cool product from Blastertech in Australia. It is their 8-shot hammer-shot cylinder. We've seen a lot of 7-shot cylinders come onto the market, but this is one that is made locally to me in Australia that is an 8-shot. And we are going to put it into this lovely red and silver hammer-shot that was given to me as a gift by Rob from Thunderdome when I was visiting Endwar. As far as I'm aware, this is a stock American spec hammer-shot, so we'll crony it with the stock cylinder, and then once we've put the turret and their spacer in, which I believe is included, but don't quote me on that, we'll see what FPS we get afterwards. Now, this was sent to me by Blastertech to review, so when we talk about the pros and cons, just consider the fact that I didn't pay for this. Alright, so we'll put the average of the FPS right about here, but for me it looked like it was shooting about 60-65 FPS. So that'll be our benchmark for this blaster. Aha! So, it did already have a little bit of a spacer in it. This is not my blaster, so I didn't know. So that's 60-65 FPS with this small little spacer. And this one is quite a bit longer, although I know that with a stock spring you can get quite a bit more compression than that one has there. I believe, at least on the Australian spec spring, you can get a 15mm spacer in for maximum pre-compression. We shall, first of all, take this old spacer out, which is quite easy. Now, replacing the cylinder in a hammer shot is very straightforward. You just take the cylinder out. Some hammer shot cylinders will have a separate pin, but the Blastertech design includes the pin printed on the cylinder. This piece, which is what the pull index is on, so when you prime, it pulls that back, which turns the turret. Then when you fire, it goes back forward. In this particular printing, it's a loose fit. However, I believe Blastertech has updated the design so it's a light press fit. And we just chuck that in there like that. Next up is the spacer, which we slide onto the, maybe not, there we go. And then getting this spring back on can sometimes be a bit of a hassle, so have a bit of patience with this step. Alright. And then we close up the shell. Nice and simple. And we're done. One rebarreled hammer shot. We've now added a lot more capacity. Let's give it an FPS test and see how it goes. Okay, and there we go. One thing to note was that the first shot that we fired was only 45 FPS, but we had a shot that went up to 80-ish FPS, and that is quite interesting. I believe that's probably because the 3D print on every single barrel is ever so slightly different, but all in all I believe that's an increase in performance. We'll have to do the averaging, but that looked like it was higher than the previous one. So I just noticed that the air restrictor is permanently pressed in on the blaster by a ring that runs around the base of the cylinder, which means we can do two things. If we load up 2 darts that are half length and they don't leave the barrel, the second one doesn't leave the barrel, we could actually use this as a kind of inline clip. So let's check. Oh, that's sweet. That's really cool. We could load 16 darts and get 16 shots out of this thing if we use Steffens, so I'm gonna test that real quick. This is very similar to some designs of some very old revolvers where you had 2 black powder charges loaded end to end. So that makes me very happy. Alright, let's try this. Okay, so that's the first 8 darts. Now we have the second set of 8, which are all basically lined up at the front. Okay, that's really cool. That's a 16-shot hammer shot. That's pretty cool. I'm very impressed by that. Yeah, wow. I think so. The first one that was about 40 FPS, and then it kicked up to about 60 FPS. So you definitely sacrifice something in performance, but 16 shots in a hammer shot? Damn.
That's more than a Lawbringer.
That's more than a Lawbringer, and I can still holster that in a Kydex holster on my hip. Yeah, that's really cool. Do I want 16 shots in a hammer shot, though, is the question. Actually, let's try with the darts, the same darts stuffed all the way to the bottom. Taken those AccuFake darts and ramrodded them down into the bottom of the barrel, and just get a comparison metric on the FPS. Interesting. Okay. Alright, that's quite interesting. It seems that if you want to use Stefan darts in these, this turret, you need to load them in the front half of the barrel, and when you do, you get a fairly decent performance, but if you load them in the back, it doesn't look like they will come out of the blaster. And if they do, they're at quite low FPS. So, if you are going to be using Stefans in this kit, for whatever reason, double load them, because then it acts as a inline barrel, clip, tube thing, and you get 16 dart capacity, and yeah, that's really cool.
It seems to be an air volume thing.
Yes, obviously the plunger tube on the hammer shot is quite small, so you're not putting very much air through there.
You can only fight the friction for that amount of distance, or something like that, or...
Well...
How does that work?
Okay,
Like,
the best way to think about it is that the energy that is being put in to the dart by the plunger is, in some cases, equal to the energy that is taken out of it by friction. If you want more power, you could increase the spring. We're not going to do that because personally I find it quite uncomfortable to use a hammer shot with the stock hammer on a high spring load, and I find that the aftermarket available kits that are either 3D printed or metal, they don't really provide that much additional performance with a bigger spring, and it just makes it much harder to one-hand prime. I would rather have a lower FPS hammer shot than a hammer shot that is difficult to prime it, because that just defeats the purpose of what this blaster is designed to do, which is, you know, fire a bunch of shots really quickly. So let's talk a little bit about the aesthetics and the print quality before we wrap this whole thing up. If we have a look, the design on the cylinder is a little bit inspired by the stock, but not quite, so it's its own thing. It doesn't have the sort of nice, majestic, sweeping curves on the front, but what that does do is give you a very consistent flat end for the barrel. So, all in all, I'm a fan. It's subtle, but it's not over the top. So something that really needs to be brought up when talking about a 3D printed replacement cylinder are these things on the rotation mech. Previously, people have reported these wearing out over time, and unfortunately that's something that we can't test in a video about this blast because I don't have the time to fire thousands of darts. However, I've used other 3D printed replacement cylinders and I have had no issues with them in the long term. I've had one running for many events now with no issues. So I can't test, but I have confidence in this design. The print quality is quite exceptional, and that is one of the sort of gifts and a curse of this thing. It is much more expensive than the 7-shot, it's not on my wall, It's much more expensive than their 7-shot option, and also other 7-shot options, because some you can even get for free on Thingiverse. So, would I buy this? Yeah. Yeah, I'd buy this. If I didn't have this, I'd definitely buy it. 8 shots is more than 7, which is more than 5. For me, worth it. Is it worth it for you? I don't know. I can't tell you that. But I would have no hesitations, personally, putting my money behind the product. Loading this up with 8 times 2 Stephens, that's a really cool idea. Because we're basically transitioning to Stephens at our events, and having 16 shots in a hammer shot is pretty cool. So I've been Ryan from 8 Taste Battle, and this has been the Blastertech 8-shot hammer shot. If you're looking to pick one of these up, you can find a link in the description below. If you enjoy these sorts of videos, make sure to subscribe, and a huge thank you to all of our Patreons. We wouldn't be able to do this without you. See you in the next one.